morning, everyone. Good to see you all. Day 11, merrily on our way. Today, we're going to get right into the practice. You've essentially, developed an understanding of what to do within the technique, KUMBHAKA, which, just to paraphrase, you're trying to create as much internal change as possible within your inner body, right? So you're trying to hold your breath for as long as you can to create that change. Very obvious to you all at this point, that change is stressful, but you're exposing yourself to those stress hormones and that part of your physiology. And the idea is that the more time you spend exposed to that stress, the more comfortable you become with it. And, the leap in logic is very short at that point. The more comfortable I am with stress, the easier it is to operate in a stressful world and to stay in contact with my own being, with my clarity, with my focus, with my intentions. And you'll see that that's exactly what's going on when you're attempting to hold your breath for that extra count. You lose connection with yourself. And you're sort of catapulted into terror or catapulted into forgetfulness or the amnesia of fear. And so the yogis, in terms of like space, believe that internal, that self that sort of, affords us our lucidity is deep inside. So the yogis applied like a spatial dimension to this sincerity and said that it is as far within us as is possible. And when we are catapulted into fear or lose contact with that sincerity, we are pulled into the external, into the mind, into the body, and into the environment. And so that great hope in terms of space with meditation is to internalize. And so that's what we're doing. We're holding our breath for as long as possible, befriending these emotions of fear so that we can stay internalized and sincere. But the beginning, the sort of preface of our practice we worked on yesterday, and it was essentially honoring the fact that we suffer, that we have fear, we have insecurity, we have doubt, and that the willingness to understand that that's the very reason behind our desire to participate in this sort of work. It informs us and empowers our practice. And so that was tethered to karma, and the word itself was dukkha, right? Suffering. And then at the end of it all, we're embracing this meditative state, which is the consequence of this physiological change, and we're applying our attention to a certain idea, which is KAIVALYA, aloneness. And so just to tie that into this space, this internal direction, when we occupy our most sincere zones, which the yogis identify as deeply internal, we find that we stand alone. And that's sort of it. Learning to embrace that aloneness symbolically, but also literally, right? You're taking the time, you're finding some corner in your house, it's early in the morning, not everyone is up. And so there is this quality of aloneness in our real world situation. And you're already sort of embracing it by the very fact that you're here right now. Learning to embrace that aloneness is a huge part of sort of like meditative maturity. And so we're just sort of fixating on that and increasing our understanding that that's a part of the process. And so what we're going to do today and tomorrow is you're going to be sort of left to your own devices, but honoring each segment of your sort of ritual at this point. Once we assume our practice, you're sitting down, you're getting into your breath, honor that karmic intention of recognizing dukkha. Acknowledge that there is still suffering, that there is still insecurity, and in that you are an imperfect creature, but once you can embrace that imperfection, all of a sudden you are elevated and there is perfection in that imperfection. That little cliche becomes true. And then you'll get into the technique, keep it super physical, hold your breath for as long as you can. I got some questions about the inhale. Once all this CO2 is built up, the inhale becomes pretty panicked and fast and seems to get shorter and shorter and shorter because you're gasping for breath. At this point, your baseline is sort of your safety net. If you can't inhale for your baseline because there's too much CO2 and there's too much panic, then you need to reduce your numbers so that you're always inhaling for a baseline. When we get into like the third week, that final week, we're gonna sort of like put the kibosh on all the counting and just do everything for as long as possible, as hard as possible. But at this point, if you can't inhale for your baseline, reduce the ratio, reduce the count so that you are sort of like staying true to the 1 to 1.5, 1 to 1.5. And so you're going to do that, keep it super physical. And then at the end, once we're in this meditative zone, our bodies have returned back to like that homeostasis, the proper levels of oxygen and CO2, and you're just left in this like buzzing, euphoric wakefulness. You'll just focus on KAIVALYA. You'll focus on the fact that you are in fact alone, and that's a really powerful space to be in. Okay, cool. So let's get into this. This will be the routine for the next 3 days, and it'll just give you time to build a relationship with the ritual of our practice now. The beginning is dukkha and karma. The actual work is KUMBHAKA, breath retention, and the final experience is KAIVALYA, aloneness. As always, happy to see you all. Such a joy. Day 11, well on our way. And let's get into this. So, comfortable seated position. Hips tilt forward, spine is very, very tall. Wrists resting on knees, straighten your arms, bring a random finger to each thumb. And so you are in the beginning, the opening of your practice. And hopefully this will become a ritual for you once the challenge is over. And so you're breathing deeply into the belly, warming up the respiratory muscles. The euphoria of the inhale, the tranquility of the exhale. And immediately there is a surge in sincerity. The second you occupy stillness and arrest the fidgeting and movement of the body, yogis believe the mind internalizes. You become the thing, not the world. Slow down the breath a little bit more. For the next 4 minutes, not too long, contemplate. Think critically and honestly. Acknowledge yourself as imperfect in the sense that you suffer. And the reality is that suffering is seen as weakness, seen as something to escape, something to overcome. And those that suffer endlessly are often cast out by society, whether it's their fault or not. And so there is a stigma that we apply to suffering. And it takes courage to eradicate that stigma and be truthful with ourselves. And the word is dukkha, D-U-K-K-H-A. Try to slow down your inhale and shift your attention from dukkha, from the acknowledgement of suffering, which when we embrace is actually invigorating because we're being honest. Shift your attention from that to finding your baseline. Start to count. Now the baseline is flexible. Once you have it, KUMBHAKA, breath retention, inhale, hold, exhale, hold, 1 to 1.5 ratio. Again, if you find that you can't maintain your baseline with your inhale, then you need to reduce it and reduce the entire ratio for the breath technique. Baby steps. The reason we are fixating on dukkha is because we're honoring the tradition. The yogis believe the only reason any of us play these strange games and invest our energy in these exercises, which are grueling, is because we are attempting to overcome our pain, our stress, our imbalance, our cloudedness. Keep it physical for the next 15 minutes. Again, stay true to your ratios. If you can, add 1 or 2 counts to your retentions. At this point, if your inhale is stifled, panicked, and shorter than your baseline, it's okay. Just 1 or 2 rounds pushing the envelope. Now, while you're holding your breath, stay relaxed. Try to connect to your heartbeat. Intend to slow down your internal rhythms. And appreciate that the sensation itself is not dukkha, is not suffering. Your response to the sensations is suffering. And now breathe normally, release the technique. Let the lungs breathe on their own. Resist the impulse to move, but at the same time, let the body hold stillness. Imagine yourself like a stone sinking in water. You are internalizing. And from time to time, consider aloneness. There's beauty in it, there's power in it, there's sincerity in it, there's honesty in it. And now externalize the mind. Listen to the world around you. And notice the ease in which you can extend gratitude into your morning. The simplicity of appreciating life is manifest as miracle. Slow down the breath. And so from the vantage point of our aloneness, like the summit of a mountain, we get this expansive view on the human condition. We see the sunshine, we see the shadows, and it is all meaningful. Satyananda Saraswati, a Swami, said, yoga is not an ancient myth buried in oblivion. Nirvana is not a legend. Samadhi is not a fable. It is a mental disposition, an entrained attitude that permits an expansive and inclusive worldview. And so with a breath in now, reach your arms up and overhead. Bring your palms to touch over your skull and just feel the aliveness of movement and how tall your spine can actually be. Feels good. And as you exhale, bring your hands to heart center, but keep the spine this tall. It just shows you the potential of your posture. Yoga, union with the self, and from that, union with the world, is not an ancient myth buried in oblivion. Acknowledge dukkha. There is stress, there is fear, there is uncertainty, there is insecurity. Of course, it's fine. Acknowledge prana. There is also vitality. Acknowledge tapas. There is also the willpower to overcome our perspectives. And all of that demands we connect to ourselves. KAIVALYA, aloneness. Lift your thumb knuckles to third eye center, gently grazing the skin of your forehead with your thumbs. And try to feel that tingling, buzzing sensation. Again, technique, focus so much on that little point of experience that other parts of the body blur out, that there are moments or blips of forgetfulness. What time it is, how long you've been meditating, what day it is. Release your wrists to your knees. Again, assume the mudras, ending skillfully. And with a breath in, just open your eyes, looking out into your space, and acknowledge that you are inescapably singular. Your independence, which leads into your aloneness, is inevitable. But what you are confronting is the same as what we are all confronting, which is the world, the mystery, the familiar, the potential, all of it.